episode of Reading with Shiloh, man. It's part 9. Part 9. It's part 9. Part 9 of, man, of The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James, the Toussaint Louverture and the San Domingo Revolution, man. Man, I'm feeling some type of way, so I'm gonna go ahead and read and do my part for the revolution. Do my part for the revolution, man, so we can go ahead and try to help this thing go further, so we can bring back some betterness in the men and the people, man. We got to lead the way. We got to lead the way. And I'm going to do my part by reading. So we're going to go ahead and try to finish off chapter 4 today. That's what we're going to do. We ain't going to try. We're going to succeed. We're going to succeed to finish off chapter 4 today, man. We have all we need to succeed, so all we got to do is do so. Man, I hope everybody's good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's dive into this sea of pages, man. Let's dive into this sea of pages. It's getting good. There's a lot of communication, a lot of conversations going on these days about a lot of humbuggery. But despite the humbug, we're going to have to stand up strong. And part of the standing up strong is going to do some things. It's going to take some doing. It's going to take some doing. And we might have to do some things that we ain't really like to do before. Stand up and speak out in places that we ain't really spoke out before. But we have to make it happen in order for changes to happen, in order for changes to be made. And it's on each of us real men, to stand up and make them changes. So let me do my part, baby. I'm going to do my part. Reading with Shiloh. I'm out here. I'm out here. Let's read, whether you like it or not, man. We got to put better images out there. And they think none of us can read anyway, so I'm going to read and show them differently. I'm out here assassinating books. This book number 27 on the list. Book number 27. And we're going to figure out what it is and what it ain't, what we can and what we can't, and what lies can we expose and what truths can be told as we search the depths of the sea of pages. And navigate navigate the treacherous waters of the sea of pages, baby. Pirate on the sea of pages. We're in chapter 4, the San Domingo masses begin. That's what we have, man. When you come on in, like, comment, subscribe, share, tell your people, Shiloh out here reading shit, man. We doing shit, building shit, learning shit. We trying to be better than we was yesterday, and definitely better for tomorrow, because it's not us. It's not just us. We have to do this for the ones that come after us, man. We have to set better examples. And that's what I'm trying to do. Help to set a better example. Give a better image. A better image. We reading here, Lumi. That's what we doing. We about to read. That's what we about to do, Miss Lumi. I don't know if you're a miss or a mister. We about to read. We about to read. We about to get into the Black Jacobins. The Black Jacobins, and learn about the Haitian Revolution and Toussaint Louverture and the San Domingo Revolution. That's what we're about to do. Because it's going to have to be a revolution in your mind, baby. And what better way to start the revolution is to learn about a revolution. What tactics did they use? What may you have to do? What may you have to use to start the revolution in your mind? Maybe you could use some of it. What can you learn and grow from? Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it. Oh, it's down there. It's tied up, man. Beard. Pirate Longbeard. Sailing the sea of pages. That's what we doing. We doing. What's up? What's up? But before we get into the reading part, we got a routine we're trying to keep up with, man. We got to build our body, work our mind, and then work our body again before the going out, man. Shalom, Stephen. Shalom, shalom. Shalom, everybody. Utkarsh, Mustafa. No, I ain't read it all. I read some of it. I have one. But it's only, you know, as people I know, they say I only got it to use it against people. But, you know, I've read some of it. I have not read the whole thing. I'm a Bible man. The Quran says if you want to know anything about the book of the law, you go to the ones who had the book of the law. Israel. The book of the law is the Bible, not the Quran. But I have one. But we're not worried about that book right now. And I don't know if I'm going to read the Quran on here. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the book at hand. The Revolution. That's the book that I'm worried about. The Slave Revolution in San Domingo, baby. That's what I'm worried about. So let's get going. Let's get going. Let's work our body, man. 25 things. Give me 25 things. Whatever it is that you can do, give me 25. I ain't gonna do it. I'm gonna do something light. Give me 25 things. Whatever it is that you feel that you can do, man. Just don't cheat yourself. Work yourself out. Build yourself up. Break yourself down and build yourself back up. That's what we gotta do. And sometimes you gotta start off slow and work your way up. Let's go. 25 things, baby. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. And since I'm the captain of the ship, I'm going to go ahead and give you 25 more. But all I ask of you is 25 things. You do 25 things, whatever you can do, man. 25 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Hey, Toussaint was working out. They said that boy exercise was vigorous. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 in that sucker, man. 25 things. That's what I did. 50 things. I did 50. All I ask of you to do is 25. 25. We done worked our body. Now let's work our mind, man. Now we can finish off with chapter 4. Chapter 4 of the Black Jacobins. The San Domingo masses, written to us and brought to us and laid before us by C.L.R. James. C.L.R. James. We're going to pick back up. Man, there was some shit going on. There was some shit going on yesterday. Oh, man. There was burning people, dismembering people, knocking them down. The leaders were coming along, like Jean-Francois and Biassou, and Toussaint even came into the picture yesterday. They talked good about them, but they still lack certain things according to them. They still was lacking in certain areas, but they still headed down as leaders of the revolution and definitely made good strides in the help of the decrees that were made to free the mulattoes and or to bring abolition to slavery, as well as, making things a little bit better for the mulattoes and the free blacks that they already had. A lot of the slaves fought, and some of the slaves found out that shit, it didn't matter, that you had a better chance of fighting with the other slaves than trying to run to your master for help, because the small whites and the big whites were still knocking them down. They were still killing them in the streets on sight. It was up and it was stuck in the revolution, baby. It was going down. And the plantation owners or masters they outdid the people who were in the insurrections. That's what I'm looking for. They outdid those who were in the insurrections by their cruelty and barbarous tendencies against the slaves that they had before. That even though the slaves and the mulattoes who were killing them during the revolution, they still didn't do them as bad as they were done by being slaves. But let's get back into it. Let's jump into it, and we're going to finish. We're going to finish off chapter 4. We're going to read about an hour. We're going to read about an hour. That should finish off chapter 4 and jump to chapter 5. Here we go. But in Lacan, the assembly foamed with wrath at these goings-ons in the West, and the royalist commanders of the local forces, M. de Ravre and M. de Touzard, urged the patriots in the North to grant mulatto rights. But you will say, Must we yield to the menaces of an inferior caste and admit it to civic rights as a ransom for the evils which they caused us? One day, said the Rouvier, the scornful laughs with which you greet the important truths which I dare to tell you will change into tears of blood. And in the War of 1756, England wished to seize Cuba, and Lord Albemarle was ordered to besiege Havana. He landed with 18,000 men, and 6 months after he had only 1,800. Ooh, that's a lot had died. Where, I ask you, is the army capable of fulfilling our aim? And have you any others than the mulattoes? And no, and well, why do you reject the help which they offer you? I am not finished, and I have some other truths to tell you, and I shall tell them to you. France at this moment has her eyes fixed on San Domingo, and it is important that the claims of the mulattoes will not be listened to in France, and if even they were unjust, they will be welcomed. The constitutional decree that you suppose irreconcilable or irrevocable, that you regard as your palladium, will be inevitably modified. And the assembly promised to give the mulattoes their rights. But after the troubles were over, true, there was a slave revolt, but they had appealed to France by now, and to give rights to the mulattoes who outnumbered them who would be the hand of our colony, military and civil, to these bastards, upstarts, and their allies of the counter-revolution. They could see the results of that unholy alliance in the West, and they had the Blanchland, the governor, in their power, and they poured out their wrath on the Concorded. The West would not budge from their unity and repudiated the proclamations of the Assembly and the governor. But the 6 days after the ceremony of reconciliation, there arrived in the colony the decree of the 24th of September, and by which the constituent had withdrawn all rights from the mulattoes, and once more put their fate in the hands of the white colonists. Mean prejudices and the petty desire for domination reared heads again, and the scarcely healed wounds reopened. The intrigues of Barnave and company were coming home to roost. The 21st of November was fixed for the ratification of the Concordant, and Port-au-Prince was divided into 4 sections for the voting, and 3 had already voted on favor of the ratification. And this, for the small whites, was ruin. And Prolato and his brand were on the lookout to create some cause for a breach. And it came over a free Negro, a member of the mulatto force, who was either insulted by or insulted some whites. And he was immediately captured and hanged. And despite the moderation of the mulattoes, fighting began in the streets. And the mulattoes, taken by surprise, retreated. Fire broke out in the city, for which they were made responsible. And Prolato and his followers massacred rich white citizens, mulattoes, men, women, and children, and plundered the wealthy quarter of the town, while the flames spread and burned 2/3 of Port-au-Prince to the ground, estimated at a loss of 50 million francs. The mulattoes had been very patient and forbearing, but now they seemed to go mad. And Pichonnet, the man of proclamations, issued a ringing call for battle. Fly, my friends, to the siege of Port-au-Prince, and let us plunge our bleeding arms, avengers of perjury and perfidy, into the breast of those monsters from Europe. Too much and too long have we served as sport for these passions and their insidious maneuvers. Too much and too long have we groaned under this iron yoke. Let us destroy our tyrants. Let us bury with them, even the smallest vestige of our degradation. Let us tear up by its deepest roots the upas tree of prejudice, and recruit some, persuade others, promise, menace, threaten, drag in your wake the decent white citizens. But above all, dear friends, unity, courage, and speed. Bring arms, baggage, cannon, munitions of war, and provisions, and come at once to rally under the common standard. It is there that we all out to perish or take vengeance for God. Nature, law, and humanity so long outraged in this climate of horrors. And regards, brother, wrote to his friends, I fly to vengeance, and if my fate is not death on this expedition, I shall be back soon to join you. Long live liberty, long live equality, long live love. And rich whites and loyal and royalists, commandants followed the mulattoes, but the regard brothers, Bovas and Pinchenet, despite this treatment of the Swiss, who were the Maroons, were genuine revolutionaries, putting liberty before property. And in the frenzy of the excitation, the enraged, they summoned the slaves of the West Province and drew them into the revolution. And in their advance north, the slaves were leading the mulattoes, and in the backwood west, the mulattoes were leading the slaves. It does not need much wisdom to foresee the consequences. In the South, whites and mulattoes were on the point of forming a concordat on the model of the West, and all terms had been agreed upon when Corradou paid a visit to the South and intrigued so successfully that the unity agreement was broken. As soon as the news of the split in Port-au-Prince reached them, mulattoes and whites each took to arms, and the mulattoes made themselves masters of Jacmel and the other towns. And in self-defense, the whites in the South, outnumbered by the mulattoes, raised the slaves. And in the North, some mulatto and white proprietors formed the concordat, and the assembly disallowed it, and these mulattoes joined the slaves. Now, the white committed frightful atrocities against the mulattoes. They killed a pregnant woman, cut the baby out, and threw it into the flames. They burnt them alive. They inoculated them with smallpox, and naturally, the mulattoes retaliated in kind. But here is, as everywhere, the white planters began it, and exceeded all rivals in barbarism, being trained in violence and cruelty by their treatment of the slaves. This was at San Domingo that the three commissioners, Saint Leger and Merbec and Room, were to restore to order when they landed at Lecomte on November 29th, 1791. They were welcomed by the assembly and installed with the imposing ceremony. They issued a proclamation maliciously announcing the near arrival of large bodies of troops. To their surprise and joy, they seemed as if it would work a miracle. But Biassou, Jean-Francois, and other Negro leaders, including Toussaint, after 4 months of insurrection, had come to a dead end. And an insurrection must win victories. And the whites were content to hold the line of fortifications known as the Cordon of the West and prevent the insurrection penetrating into the West Province. The former slaves could devastate the country around, but that very devastation was making it impossible for them to exist. Famine began to kill them off. And frightened at what they considered their hopeless position and afraid of being beaten into submission, Jean-Francois and Biassou offered peace to the commissioners in return for the liberty of a few hundred leaders. Jean-Francois knew that it was a betrayal and false principles. Wrote for this 4 months old labor leader will make these slaves very obstinate. They will say that they have been betrayed. But if the commissioners granted liberty to those who were named, they would cooperate with the king's troops and hunt down those who refused to submit. And Jean-Francois knew that the business would be difficult and dangerous and said much. Proof of the passion for liberty which filled the hearts of the blacks. But he was prepared to do all that he could to help. And to soothe his conscience, wrote disloyally of his followers as the multitude of Negroes from Africa who did not know 2 words of French. And in a long and cruel list of leaders betraying brave but ignorant masses, this stands high. And Toussaint was in it up to his neck. And though working in the subordinate position, he took the leading part of the negotiations and the masterpiece of diplomatic correspondence, which the envoys of the slaves presented at the bar of the assembly, showed the distance between the men who a few weeks before had asked the whites to leave the island and the already full-fledged political maturity of Toussaint. To the end of his days, he could hardly speak French. He literally could not write 3 words without the grossette errors in spellings and grammar. And years afterwards, when he was master of Saint Domingo, he wrote thus to Dessalines: "Je avait parlé pour les follots, Berthier avant Bertie, folie, Bertie avant Thierry." He meant to write, oh Lord, je vois avait parlé de for liberté avant-hier. He could never do it, but he dictated in the local bastard French or Creole, and his secretaries wrote and rewrote until he got the exact meaning he wanted. Now, the letter begins by emphasizing that the king's proclamation has formally accepted the French Constitution, and very clearly and precisely, he has asked for a spirit of justice and moderation to help in the restoration of the country, which has suffered from the repeated shocks of the Great Revolution. This conciliatory spirit should cross the seas, and we pass now to the law related to the colonies of September 28, 1791. This law gives to the colonies the rights of deciding on the status of the free men of color and the free blacks. And Toussaint and the other traders wanted not only freedom, but political rights. But promises were not enough. They would defend the decision of the colonial assembly to the last drop of their blood. But these decisions must be clothed with the requisite formalities and followed by a long apology for the evils which they had helped to afflict on this rich and important colony. But they had not known of the new laws when they had written this first letter. And today, when we are instructed in the new laws, today, when we cannot doubt the appropriation of the mother country for all the legislative acts that you will decree concerning the interior regime of the colony and the status of the citizens, we shall not show ourselves refractory. After another long appeal to the assembly to seize this opportunity or to reestablish order promptly in so important a colony, the letter touched on the difficult question of the slaves. The laws which will be enforced concerning the status of persons free and not free ought to be the same in the whole colony. And this was obviously a finger pointing at the concordance in the West Province. It would be even to your interests if you declared by the decree bearing the sanction of the governor that it is your intention to concern yourselves with the lot of the slaves, knowing that they are the object of our solicitude. There we go. Inasmuch as the slaves had confidence in their chiefs and in the assembly, gave the job pacification to these chiefs, and the slaves would be satisfied, which would facilitate restoration of the equilibrium which has been broken. And the conclusion was the protestation of good faith and desire for a speedy settlement. Now, freedom for the leaders, however, was indispensable, and the letters were signed by Jean-Francois and Biassou, 2 others and 2 commissioners ad hoc, one of whom was Toussaint. And in its skillful use of both the moral and political connection between the mother country and the colony, it's dangling before the colonists the chance to restore the former prosperity of this great and important colony. Its firm but delicate insistence on the political rights, duly certified by law. For the freedmen, its luxuriance whenever it dealt with things that cost nothing, such as peace, goodwill, etc., and the letter could have come from the pen of a man who had spent all his life in diplomacy. The writer, knowing the temper of the colonists, had even taken the trouble to suggest to them that exactly how the slaves were to be bluffed back into bondage, and no imperialist of today, with 300 years of traditional deception behind him, could have garlanded his cloth with fair words. And the restoration of the broken equilibrium as a phrase of slavery would not have disgraced the Mandates Commission of the League of Nations. Jean-Francois had written that the thing was difficult, but it could be done, and that they were not only prepared, but able to do their Judas work, and the letters gave ample evidence. Now, political treachery is not a monopoly of the white race, and this abominable betrayal so soon after the insurrections shows that political leadership is the matter of program, strategy, and tactics, and not the color of those who lead it or lead it. Their oneness of origin with their people, nor the services they have rendered. The high and mighty colonists refused treat with these brigands who had murdered and burnt and raped. Impossible. In vain the commissioner protested, and the colonists, supremely confident that they would without difficulty drive these revolted dogs back to their kennels, and answered that they would grant pardon only to repentant criminals who returned to work. And the message ended with the terse request to the envoys: get out! Get your ass out. The white colonists could not understand that Biassou was no longer a slave, but a leader of 40,000 men. And when he got this message, he lost his temper and remembered that the white prisoners, and I shall make them pay for the insolence of the assembly, which has dared to write to me with so little respect, and ordered them all to be killed. And Toussaint, always a hater, a hater of unnecessary bloodshed, calmed his chief. The disappointed commissioners arranged an interview with Jean-Francois, and the colonial assembly accused them of plotting counter-revolution, and commissioners invited them to send delegates. Oh man, just try to see what the weather. It's been raining all night and all day. At the appointed place and time, Jean-Francois appeared, leading his horse to the bridle, and at the sight of him, Miss M. Bullitt, a colonist, was so empowered with rage that he struck him with a riding whip, and Jean-Francois, fiercely angry, fell back to his own band, and peace hung on the thread. At this dangerous moment, Saint Leger had the quite wittiness and courage to advise alone among the hostile blacks and speak to them kindly. And so moved were they that at this unexpected behavior that Jean-Francois threw himself at the feet of the men from France, and he re-altered his promise. For the freedom of 400 of the leaders and for forgetfulness of the past, he would lead the blacks back to slavery. And the commissioners asked him, as the guarantee of good faith, to return the white prisoners, and he agreed, and asked to return for his wife, a prisoner in Le Camp, and who the whites had not dared to execute for fear of reprisals. And the interview ended amicably, and Jean-Francois assured the commissioners that he was touched to see at last white men who showed humanity. The next day, he sent the promised prisoners to Le Camp, but the blacks had probably got to know that something was in the wind, and the prisoners were under a strong escort, including Toussaint, and which was scarcely sufficient to save them from the hostility of those who met on the way. The members of the delegation presented themselves at the bar of the assembly, and the president would not even speak to them, but communicated with them only by note. Ain't that some disrespectful shit? Get your ass out of here, nigga. Shit. The president would not even speak to them, but communicated with them only by note. Continue to give proof of your repentance and say to those who send you to address themselves to the commissioners. It is only by their intercession that the assembly can come to a decision on your fate. And he wanted to impress on the blacks that the commissioners were subordinate to the assembly, and he succeeded. So disdainful was the assembly that it would not include the negotiations in the minutes. Toussaint had plenary powers, and in a vain attempt to break down the pride of the colonists, who is on my back, he secretly reduced the number of the freedmen from 400 to 60. That's a big drop. That is a big drop. 400 to 60, man, that's 340. You said, fuck 340. I think he shouldn't have went back. But who am I? I think he should have stayed at that 400. The colonists would not hear it. And then and only then did Toussaint come to an unalterated decision from which he never wavered and from which he died. There we go. Complete liberty for all, and to be obtained and held by their own strength. The most extreme revolutionaries are formed by circumstances, and it is probable that, looking at the wild hordes of blacks who surrounded them, his heart sank at the prospect of the war and the barbarism which would follow freedom, even if it were achieved. And he was ready to go a long way to meet the colonists. And he probably hoped for some attempt at better treatment. But having been driven to take his decision as was his way, he never looked back. And on his return, he told his chiefs not to look at the commissioners for anything. And they had only the facility of intercession, and their powers were subordinate to those of the assembly. Now Biassou, who had demanded an interview, evaded it. And henceforth it was war, and war needed trained soldiers. And Toussaint dropped his post of physician to the armies of the king, and assuming the title of brigadier general, started to train an army. And once only in his political life did he ever fail to meet an emergency that with action bold and correct. In the West Providence, Regard and Bovis and Pinchenet were using as their agents in the gangs a young slave named Hyacinth. He was only 21 years of age, but he went from plantation to plantation, claiming as most leaders of agricultural revolts that he was divinely inspired. And we can judge the backwardness of the Western slaves at the beginning of the revolution from the fact that both Hyacinth and another man, Romaine, the prophetess. That don't sound right. The prophetess. That's not a man. Other men, Romaine, the prophetess, fortified their authority with divine attributes, while Jean-Francois and Biassou in the North from the very beginning aimed at the social revolution. The blacks flocked to join the Confederate army of the mulattoes and the whites at La Croix de Bouquets. And on March 31st, the battle between the Confederates and the Patriots of Port-au-Prince took place. The slaves were nearly all native-born Africans and armed only with knives and picks and hoes and sticks with iron points, and they went into battle. Led by Hyacinth, they charged the bayonets of the Port-au-Prince volunteers and the French soldiers without fear or care for the volleys from the Prelato's cannon, which tore their ranks. And if they were killed, they would wake again in Africa and Hyacinth, the bull's tail, in his hand, ran from rank to rank, crying that this talisman would chase death away. Shit, I wonder how many of them fell for that. He charged at their head, passing unscathed through the bullets and the grape shot. And under such leadership, the Africans were irresistible, and they clutched at the horses of the dragoons and pulled off the riders. They put their arms down into the mouths of the cannons in order to pull out the bullets and called to their comrades, "Come, come, we have them!" And the cannon was discharged and blew them to pieces. But others swarmed over guns and gunners and threw their arms around them and silenced them. And nothing could stop their devotion. And after 6 hours, the troops of Port-au-Prince retired in disorder. And they had lost over 100 soldiers, but nearly 2,000 slaves were laid dead upon the field. It's a lot of slaves. And the combined army then invested Port-au-Prince. We're going to try to get him. The whites were not only fighting with the mulattoes, but were petitioning the governor to prevent disturbers of the peace coming from the colonial assembly to disrupt the West. And they sent him the concordance that they said they would stick to them whatever he said. And they asked him to publish them, to send them to the king and to the legislative in France and to the merchants of the great ports, to everybody. And whatever the reservations they had made when they formed this pact with the bastard mulattoes, the whites were now eager to cement the alliance of Rome, was overwhelmed by the number of these appeals. And Revolution says that Karl Marx is the locomotive of history. And here was a locomotive that had traveled at remarkable speed in April 1792, not yet 3 years after the fall of the Bastille, that the white patriots in Port-au-Prince were being besieged by a composite army of royalist commandants, white planters, brown-skinned mulattoes, and black slaves, and none of them constrained, but all of them the time being free and equal partners. And no doubt, most of the rich were only awaiting the restoration of the order to put the slaves back into their places again. Excuse me. My bad. I'm feeling it. I might stand up. There we go. To put the slaves back into their places again, but the mere fact of the revolution, association, and the temporary equality meant that the old spell was broken and things would never be the same again. And the colonial assembly, in addition to war with the slaves and war with the mulattoes, had started a fierce row with the commissioners over presidents. And in Lecomte, where the patriots actually had the governor under arrest for some time and were plotting to murder Merbeck, who sailed for home on February 30th, St. Leger had gone to Port-au-Prince, and the patriots there, spurred on by the assembly in Lecomte, threatened to deport him, and he took refuge with the Confederates. And St. Leger and Rouen were now seriously alarmed, and they're not at revolting slaves, but at the growth of the counter-revolution. And in the same way as Barnave, the Lamettes and their friends in France, white San Domingo was growing tired of the red cockade and beginning to look once more at the royal authority. The confidence and the Confederate army seemed all the whites' cockade. But just at this time, Pinchonet had a meeting with St. Leger, and what he told that gentleman made him fly post-haste to France. Now, Rouen also was due to leave 3 days after, but in the chance conversation, he smelt the royalists plotting and stayed to ward it off. And the royalists indeed thought that San Domingo was now ripe for the picking, but they were mistaken, and Pinchonet had played an astute game, and the royalists had hoped to use the mulattoes. Now, they found that they had been used instead. And as Bovas told Room afterwards, we were never the dupes of the white concades. We had to conquer our rights. We needed auxiliaries. And if the devil had presented himself, we would have enrolled him. And these gentlemen offered and were used, and we used them while allowing them to believe that we were not their dupes. The decree of April 4th now came to clinch the victory of the mulattoes and allow them openly to support the French Revolution for time. The colonial question had frayed the nerves of and exhausted the constituent, and all of whose members were excluded by law from the legislative, which met on October the 1st, and the new deputies were no better off as far as the colonial question was concerned, for in addition to the rights of man for mulattoes, they now faced a slave revolt. On the right were the Fuelants, a king's party, led on the colonial question by Von Blanc, and who approved the condition of the slaves, even the mulattoes. And the left was strong since the elections, but though they were over 100 Jacobin deputies in the legislative, they were split. And on the extreme left were Robespierre, and the mountain on the right, and were the Brissotons, or followers of Brisset, and better known in history as the Gorodins. Now, the Paris masses organized in the commune were following the Jacobins, and Robespierre and the mountains would fight for mulatto rights. So would Brisset, but Brisset's group was comprised of Vergnaud, Godet, and others, and actually deputies and others, actual deputies of the maritime towns. The Gorodins were so called after the Gorodin province, or the Garonne province, whose chief town was Bordeaux, and Vignaud was deputy for Bordeaux, and all the maritime towns were still firmly against the rights of the man for mulattoes. What first frightened them was the way that the news of the insurrection reached France, and Paris heard of it from an English paper, and the English ambassador gave information about the seriousness of the uprising. And he had got it from Jamaica through London, and the Moniteur, day after day, asked why no news from the Blancland. On November 7th, the Monitor printed a copy of the letter the colonists had written to the governor of Jamaica. Only on the 8th was the letter from Blancland asking for troops read in the house. And the maritime bourgeois began to look at these colonists with different eyes, and the mulattoes at least were faithful to France, and they were strong supporters of slavery. Come on, mulattoes, you got to do better. The first question was for troops to quell the revolt, but in the revolution comes first, and right and left wing of the legislators wanted to know how many troops were to be sent and who would control them. And the king was still head of the army and navy, and the officers were royalists and centers of the counter-revolution. The king's ministers and officials were still functioning in Paris and in San Domingo. And to put an army and a fleet into the hands of these people was to be putting weapons which, after the suppression of the insurrection, perhaps before, perhaps before, might be used against the revolution itself, and place the richest colony of France entirely in royalist hands. Now, Jacobins and the Fuelants fought it out day after day, but through it was the question of repressing a slave revolt, and the legislative, like the constituent, would not tolerate the use of the word slave. Why not? You don't want them to see what you really got going on down here? When a deputy in the course of speech happened to say, "But the slaves are the property of the colonists," there were the usual protests and demands that the speaker be called to order. The legislative, more to the left, was perhaps for this reason even more sensitive than the constituent, and the Colonial Commission, wishing as usual to have everything settled in the ministry, would not make any report. But the friend of the Negro were far more powerful now, and Brissonet gave, excuse me, yes, sir, were far more powerful now, and Brissonet gave warning. If the commission did not present its report in 10 days, he was going to open a debate on December the 1st. And during the internal delegates from the Colonial Assembly arrived in Paris, and on November the 30th, one of them, Millet, put the colonist case. It is probable that never in any parliamentary assembly was so much impudent lying and dishonesty packed into my single speech, man. We will. What's up, my boy? Can I get a hug? Give me a hug. After I'm done reading, give me a hug. I got 3 more pages. Now, Millet's description of slavery proved to be the happiest form of the society known in either ancient or modern times. We live in peace, gentlemen, and in the midst of our slaves. Let an intelligent and educated man compare the deplorable state of these men of Africa with the pleasant and easy life which they enjoy in the colonies. And sheltered by all the necessities of life, surrounded with an unease of unknown in the greater part of the country of Europe, secure in the enjoyment of their property, for they had property and it was sacred, and cared for in their illnesses, with an expense and attention that you would seek in vain in the hospital, so boasted of England, protected, respected in the infirmities of age, and in peace with their children and with their family, freed when they had rendered important services. And such was the picture, true and not embellished, of the government of our Negroes. And this domestic government perfected itself, particularly during the last 10 years, with a care of which you will find no model in Europe, and the most sincere attachment bond the master to the slave. We slept in safety in the middle of these men who had become our children, and many among us had neither locks nor bolts on our doors. Yeah, they became your children, all right. We know how to treat people children do. You gotta watch yourself. They might do you something in your sleep. That sleep monster is on my back, man, but I'm trying to persevere. We only got like 3 more pages. Yeah, 2 or 3 pages. This was supposed to be the lot of the slaves up to 1787 and the year before the Lejeune case. Terror to keep the slaves in subjection, attested in 1,000 documents, and no such thing. True, there were a small number of hard and ferocious masters, but what was the lot of these wicked men, branded by public opinion, looked upon with horror by all honest people, and shut out from all society, without credit in their business, and they lived in opprobrium and dishonor, and died in misery and despair? What was it that changed the idyllic state of affairs? And at this point, enter the villain. However, gentlemen, a society takes shape in the bosom of France, and prepares from afar the destruction of the convulsions to which we are subjected. And far from being able to continue with our work, this society forced us to renounce it, and by sowing the spirit of unsubordination among our slaves and anxiety among us. Having hurled his bomb at the friends of the Negro, Millet turned to the assembly itself, and he knew the tender spot. And soon they say that this society will demand that the slave trade be suppressed, that it is to say that the profits which they can result from it for French commerce will be delivered to foreigners. And for never will its romantic philosophy persuade all the powers of Europe that it is their duty to abandon the cultivation of the colonies and to leave their inhabitants of Africa a prey to the barbarity and their tyrants, rather than to employ themselves everywhere. And under kind masters, they exploit in a territory which would remain uncultivated. A couple more pages. Oh man, excuse me. And under kind masters, they exploit a territory which would remain uncultivated without them, and of which the rich productions are for the nations which possess them a great source of industry and of prosperity. The mulattoes, they and the whites have lived peaceably and happily, and the bonds of affection and of good feelings were excited between these two classes of men, and would be strengthened by the just and humane law the colonial assembly would pass. But here, too, the friends of the Negroes falsely represented the attitude of the whites as the pretensions of vanity and an endeavor to resist just claims. But no man can keep it up forever, least all men trained in French intellectual tradition. Before Millet concorded that, he suddenly let slip the elegant drapery and gave a glimpse of the white San Domingo in all the bloated nakedness. Well, I wish I knew what that was. Oh man. These coarse men, the blacks, are incapable of knowing liberty and enjoying it with wisdom, and the imprudent law which would destroy their prejudice would be for them and for us a decree of death. The legislature listened in silence, and this was no judging with the word slavery. It was the thing itself, presented by the bourgeoisie for their endorsement through all eternity. And Jarry notes that there was no applause, and none even of those disgusted interruptions, with which the legislator was wont to express his disapproval of the mere word slavery. Now, when Millet was finished, the president invited the delegates from the honors of the session, but this was too much, and one of the extreme left jumped up in a rage. What? What, Mr. President? You invite the session men who have just outraged philosophy and liberty, men who have just insulted, but the profits of the slave trade were too much for the assembly, and the left itself had no heart for this business. And the next day, Brissett took the floor, and on behalf of the mulattoes made a masterly and celebrated speech. And he showed the rich whites anxious to have peace and ready to give political rights to the mulattoes. The patriots, for the most part, heavily inundated to France and back on to the dependents and jealous of the mulattoes who did not owe, and determined to maintain the privilege of the race, all the more dear to them in that it rested now on such insecure foundations. Oh, it's getting on me. 2 more pages. Oh man. Give me a minute. Woo-wee. Get off me, bitch. Get off me. I'm trying to rope. It is by this that we can explain the existence all of the same time in the heart of the same colonists of hatred against the man of color who claims his rights, and against the merchant who claims his debts, against the free government which wishes that justice be done to all. Now, once more, the bourgeoisie battled over mulatto rights, and this time the contest lasted for weeks, in and out of the house, and von Blanc took the place of the absent Barnave, but the friends of the Negro had no argument in the concordance between whites and mulattoes, and the maritime bourgeoisie were now convinced that the only way to save the colony was to give the mulattoes their rights, and the negotiations of the patriots with other countries had opened their eyes as to the real nature of these gentlemen. Oh man, shit. Now, Verginoid and Godet were able to convince their patrons that the old policy was false, and the great ship owners, merchants, and traders threw over the colonists. And Barnave's group, the Fulants, formed the governing ministry, but the revolution was taking courage again. The Fulants were overthrown in March 10th, and the Gorodin ministry came in, and with Roland at its head, but Madame Roland and Brissot as their leading spirits. Damn. Oh, shit. On March 24th, by a large majority, the legislative passed a decree giving full political rights to the men of color. And some tried to argue that the decisions of the constituent were sacrosanct, but the deputy on the left, to the accompaniment of the great applause, challenged the theory that the legislative was forever bound by the decrees of the constituent and boldly asserted the sovereignty of the people over the rights of the formal assemblies. Now, 3 new commissioners were appointed with the supreme power of the large force to enforce the decree and to restore the order, and on April the 4th, the king's signature made the decree law. It's law. 2 more pages. 2 more pages, then I gotta go wash clothes. Oh, shit. Damn, man. Man, that sleep monster on me. It's on me. It's on me, man. It's massaging my shoulders, telling me to go to sleep. But I'm going to bust his ass. I'm going to bust him upside the head and keep reading. Get on me, sheep monster. Hit him with a wingtip. But what of the slaves? The slaves had revolted for freedom, and the revolt was to be suppressed. But at least there might be a promise of pardon, of kind treatment in the future. Not a word, neither from von Blanc on the right, nor Robespierre on the left. And Robespierre made an ass of himself by violently objecting to the word slavery when proposed as a substitute for non-free. And Brissot made a passing reference to them in being unfortunate. And that was all, man. The cause of the men of color is then the cause of the patriots of the old third estate, and finally of the people so long oppressed. So had spoken Brissot, and Brissot, representative of the third estate, was prepared to help the third estate of the mulattoes and give the people in France, as well as in San Domingo, phrases. The French peasants were still clamoring about the assembly to relieve them of feudal ones. of feudal dues. There we go. And the Brissotons would not do it, and they would not touch property, and the slaves were property. And Blingetti, a deputy, proposed a motion. Ooh, oh, shit. Come on, man. Come on. We're almost there. Come on. Don't let him get you. Don't let him get you. They would not touch the property. And the slaves were property. And Blingetti, a deputy, proposed a motion for gradual enfranchisement. The legislative would not even discuss it, and on March 26, 2 days after the decree in favor of the mulattoes, Ducasse dared to propose that every mulatto child be free, and whatever the status of his mother. And the legislative, in wrath, voted the previous question, and Ducasse was not even allowed to speak on his motion. And the friends of the Negroes, good liberals, were now in power and were as silent about slavery as any colonists. And the slaves, ignorant of policies, had been right not to wait on these eloquent phrase markers. And Toussaint, that astute student of French politics, read and noted. Always trying to get me, man. We got one more page. A third, 3/3 or 3/3 of the page.
I got some zero, please.
Yes, sir. I'm almost done. I got one more page left. I said I'm almost done. I have one more page left to read. Toussaint, alone among the black leaders, with freedom for all in his mind, was in those early months of 1792 organizing out of the thousands of ignorant and untrained blacks an army capable of fighting European troops. And the insurgents had developed the method of attack based on their overwhelming numerical superiority. And they did not rush forward in mass formation like fanatics. And they placed themselves in groups, choosing wooded spots for such a way as to envelop their enemy, and seeking to crush them by weight of numbers. They carried out these preliminary maneuvers in dead silence, and while their priests, the black ones, chanted the wanga, and the women and children sang and danced in a frenzy. I wonder if that's the wanga is part of some voodoo. I wonder if it's part of some voodoo. The wanga. When these had reached the necessary height of the excitement, the fighters attacked. And if they met with resistance, they retired without exhausting themselves. But at the slightest hesitation in the defense, they became extremely bold, and rushing up to the cannon, swarmed all over their opponents. And at first, they could not even use the guns they captured, and used to apply the match at the wrong end. It was from these men, unable to speak 2 words in French, that an army had to be made, and Toussaint could not have thousands following him. It is characteristic of him that he, being with a few hundred picked men, devoted to himself, who learnt the art of war with him from the beginning, as they fought side by side against the trained them assiduously. Let's see what that is, assiduously, my bad. Let's see it, assiduously. I think it's assiduously. Assiduously.
Here's the definition of assiduously. With great care and perseverance.
Assiduously. Yeah. Assiduously. And by July 17th, July 1792, He had no more than 500 attached to himself, and the best of the revolutionary troops. And these are not the perorations in the legislative would be decisive in the struggle for freedom, but nobody took much notice of Toussaint and his black followers, Fulants and Jacobins. Perorations. Fulants and Jacobins in France, whites and mulattoes in San Domingo, were still looking upon the slave revolt as a huge riot which would be put down in time, and once the division between the slave owners was closed. And we're going to stop right there. Wow. That was chapter 4. We finished chapter 4, a little over an hour. We made it to chapter 5. Oh, man. Chapter 5 is, and the Paris Mass is complete. I was doing a lot of yawning. Oh, man, I don't know where that sleep monster just popped up on me. Oh, man. But it's all great, man. We pushed through it. We persevered through it. Success is what we did. We succeeded. We succeeded in reading today's session in part 8 of The Black Jacobins by Toussaint Louverture. My bad. The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James, the Toussaint Louverture, and the San Domingo Revolution. We have succeeded. We have made it to chapter 5. Oh, man, I don't know what I got to do to get this shit off my back. This monkey. Sleep monkey. Get off my back, bitch. Hey. But we made it, man. Let's get the 25 things out the way, man, because I'm fighting. I am fighting this shit right now. Oh, I don't know why I want to go to sleep. Oh, why? 25 things, man. Give me 25 things. Let's go. 25 of them things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Oh, I gave 25, man. 25 things. I might need to do some jumping jacks or something. What it's gonna be? Shit. 25 things. Hey, that was today's reading, man. I apologize for all the yawning. That damn sleep monster was massaging my shoulders, man. I was trying to tell him get off me. Get your mind right. I was trying to tell him get off me, but he wasn't budging. It wasn't budging. Sleep. It wasn't budging me, but hey, we made it through. Oh, I even had to stand up. I had to stand up on y'all. Oh, man. I wonder if it's the weather. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's all the rain. I don't know. Maybe it's the rain that got me sleeping. Sleepy. But I'm glad I read and got the reading done before I fell asleep, if that's what I'm going to do. I don't know. I'm upset I can't go fishing. I wanted to go fishing today. I sure wanted to try to get me some sackerly in my cooler, some crappie. Hey, but maybe another time. We'll try to come back later. We'll see. Maybe later on tonight. We'll see how the day goes. So maybe later on tonight we'll come back and start off chapter 5. Whew. As we keep pushing on to the finish of the book. And I'll continue to do my part by reading. Mr. I'll read that thing. Hey, I'm gonna stop it right there, man. I gotta go see what this is. So, man, I'm out here. I appreciate everybody that stopped by. Took the time to listen in and put up with my yawning today. I appreciate it though. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Tell your people SHILO out here reading shit, man. We're trying to build up the channel, trying to keep moving it forward, build up the people. The likes help. Believe me, all the likes help. The chat, the actions and reactions in the chats and the typing in the chat. All that helps. All those little things help. So let's keep growing the channel. Let's keep pushing. Let's continue to be better and better and better because we have all that we need to succeed, man. Whew. We just got to learn how to use the shit we got. We got to use it better. We have to use it for what it's meant to be used for. Execute a plan, make it happen, set the goals, accomplish them, and watch what greatness comes of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, until next time, man. Shalom, everybody. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Stay warm, stay dry out there, man. All praises to the Most High for the ability to open your eyes today. Shalom, shalom, shalom. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. I'm out here. SHILO out.